What happens when America's sweetheart meets her match in an unexpected showdown that nobody saw coming? Picture this: Kelly Clarkson, the beloved pop icon and talk show host, sitting across from Carson Daly on the Today Show set. What should have been a routine interview about her latest album quickly spirals into television chaos. The cameras are rolling, millions are watching, and what unfolds next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these two entertainment powerhouses. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story will blow your mind. The morning started like any other at the Today Show studios in Rockefeller Plaza. Carson Daly, seasoned television host and familiar face to millions of viewers, was preparing for what he assumed would be another pleasant celebrity interview. Kelly Clarkson had just released her 5th studio album, and the promotional tour was in full swing. Her publicist had arranged the appearance weeks in advance, and everything seemed perfectly orchestrated for a smooth, friendly conversation about music, motherhood, and her thriving career. Carson shuffled through his notes one final time, glancing at the standard talking points. Kelly's journey from American Idol winner to Grammy-winning artist, her recent divorce, her successful daytime talk show, and, of course, the new album that was climbing the charts. He had interviewed Kelly before, and she was always professional, warm, and media-savvy. There was no reason to expect anything different this time around. Good morning and welcome back to Today. I'm Carson Daly, and joining me now is the incredibly talented Kelly Clarkson. Kelly, thanks for being here this morning, Carson said with his trademark smile as the cameras began rolling. Kelly shifted in her chair, her usual bright demeanor seeming slightly strained around the edges. Thanks for having me, Carson. Always a pleasure to be here. So let's talk about the new album. It's been getting incredible reviews, and fans are saying it's some of your most personal work yet. Can you tell us about the inspiration behind it? Kelly's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, Carson, as you know, I've been through some significant life changes recently. The album reflects a lot of that journey, the ups and downs, the real stuff that people don't always want to talk about in interviews like this. Carson nodded, sensing a slight edge in her voice, but pressing forward with his prepared questions. Absolutely. And I think that's what makes your music so relatable. Now, I have to ask about the song Breaking Point. The lyrics are pretty intense. Is that about your recent divorce? You know what, Carson, Kelly said, her voice taking on a sharper tone. I've been doing interviews all week, and every single host wants to dig into my personal life like it's some kind of entertainment for everyone else. Do you ever get tired of asking the same invasive questions? Carson blinked, clearly caught off guard by her directness. I'm sorry, Kelly. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. These are just the questions that our viewers are curious about. Curious about my pain. Curious about my children having to watch their parents' marriage fall apart in the public eye. Kelly's voice was rising slightly, and Carson could see the interview was taking an unexpected turn. Kelly, I completely understand your position, and we don't have to discuss anything you're not comfortable with. Let's talk about something else. Maybe your upcoming tour dates or your talk show. No, Carson, let's not just sweep this under the rug and pretend everything is fine. You brought it up, so let's have this conversation. Do you have any idea what it's like to have your most vulnerable moments dissected by strangers for ratings? Carson was starting to sweat under the studio lights. This was live television, and millions of viewers were watching what was quickly becoming an uncomfortable confrontation. Kelly, I think there might be a misunderstanding here. I'm just trying to do my job and give our audience the content they expect. Content they expect, Kelly laughed, but there was no humor in it. My divorce isn't content, Carson. My struggles aren't content. I'm a human being, not a commodity for your show. Of course you're not a commodity. You're here promoting your album, and these personal elements are part of what makes your music meaningful. I'm not trying to exploit anything, really, because it sure feels like exploitation when every interview I do focuses more on my failed marriage than on the art I've spent months creating. Do you ask male artists about their divorces with this much intensity? Carson felt his professional composure beginning to crack. Kelly, I ask all my guests about the things that are relevant to their current projects and what's happening in their lives. That's what interviews are. Relevant. My private pain is relevant to selling records. Is that what we're calling journalism these days? Kelly's voice was getting louder, and Carson could see the production crew behind the cameras, starting to look nervous. I'm a professional, Kelly, and I've been doing this for over 20 years. I know how to conduct an interview, and I resent the implication that I'm some kind of tabloid vulture. Well, maybe after 20 years, you should have learned the difference between asking thoughtful questions and prying into someone's personal trauma for shock value. The tension in the studio was palpable. Carson's face was flushed, and Kelly was leaning forward in her chair, her eyes flashing with anger. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of the escalating conflict. Shock value. Kelly, you wrote songs about these experiences and put them on an album that you're here to promote. How is asking about the inspiration behind your own work inappropriate? There's a difference between asking about artistic inspiration and grilling someone about the most painful period of their life, like you're some kind of prosecutor. You're treating me like I'm on trial instead of like I'm a guest on your show. Carson took a deep breath, trying to regain control of the situation. I think we're both getting a little heated here. Maybe we should take a step back and... No, Carson, don't patronize me. Don't tell me I'm getting heated when you're the one who decided to turn this into an interrogation. I came here to talk about my music, my creativity, my art, and instead you want to pick apart my personal life like it's some kind of puzzle for your audience to solve. The studio audience, which had been silent up to this point, began to murmur uncomfortably. Carson could feel the interview slipping completely out of his control, and Kelly showed no signs of backing down. Her publicist, who had been standing off to the side, was making frantic gestures, but Kelly seemed determined to say exactly what was on her mind. You know what, Kelly, Carson said, his professional mask finally slipping completely. I've been nothing but respectful to you since you sat down. I've given you multiple opportunities to steer this conversation wherever you wanted it to go, and instead, you've chosen to attack me personally and question my integrity as a journalist. Kelly's eyes widened with disbelief. Attack you personally, Carson? You literally just spent 10 minutes trying to get me to cry on national television about my divorce, and now you're playing the victim. I asked you about a song on your album. One song. That's literally what artists do when they promote their work. They talk about their songs. If you didn't want to discuss personal topics, maybe don't write an entire album about them. So now, it's my fault for being honest in my art. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You think because I put my experiences into music, that gives you the right to dissect my life like I'm some kind of specimen under a microscope. Carson leaned back in his chair, his frustration clearly visible. Kelly, you're being completely unreasonable here. This is how interviews work. This is how they've always worked. You can't come on a talk show and expect us to pretend your music exists in a vacuum. Unreasonable. I'm being unreasonable for wanting to be treated with basic human dignity, for not wanting my children to have to watch their mother get grilled about their parents' relationship on live television. Nobody is grilling you, Kelly. This is a conversation, and you're the one who's turned it into a confrontation. I've interviewed hundreds of artists who've gone through divorces, breakups, personal struggles, and they've all managed to discuss their work without accusing me of exploitation. Kelly stood up abruptly, her microphone nearly falling from her lapel. Maybe that's because they were too polite to call you out on your tactics. Or maybe they were just desperate enough for publicity that they were willing to let you walk all over them. I'm neither. The camera operators exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to keep filming or cut away. The show's producer was frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, but neither Kelly nor Carson seemed to notice or care about the chaos. They were creating my tactics. Carson's voice rose to match hers. Kelly, I'm one of the most respected hosts in television. I've been nominated for Emmys. I've won industry awards, and I've built a career on treating guests with respect and professionalism. You don't get to come on my show and trash my reputation because you're having a bad day. A bad day? A bad day? Carson, I've been having a bad year. And people like you have made it worse by turning every interview into an opportunity to rehash my personal trauma. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to constantly have to defend your right to privacy while trying to promote your work? Then maybe don't put your private life in your songs if you don't want to talk about it. You can't have it both ways, Kelly. You can't profit from your personal experiences and then get angry when people want to understand the story behind the music. Kelly's face flushed with anger. Profit from my pain. Is that really what you think I'm doing? You think I went through a devastating divorce, watched my children's world fall apart, struggled with depression and anxiety just so I could make money off of it? That's not what I said, and you know it. I'm saying that when you choose to share those experiences through your art, they become part of the public conversation. That's the nature of being a public figure. The nature of being a public figure shouldn't include having to justify your right to basic human emotion. It shouldn't include having hosts like you treat your pain like it's entertainment for their audience. Carson stood up now too, matching her energy. Hosts like me. What exactly is that supposed to mean, Kelly? Are you suggesting that I'm somehow different from every other interviewer you've dealt with? Because I guarantee you, they're all asking the same questions I am. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the entire industry has forgotten that celebrities are human beings with real feelings and real struggles, not just content to fill airtime between commercials. Don't lecture me about the industry, Kelly. I've been working in television since before you won American Idol. I know exactly what this business is, and I know that part of being successful in it means being able to handle questions about your public persona and your work. Handle questions. Carson, there's a difference between handling questions and being subjected to an emotional strip search every time you sit down for an interview. What you're doing isn't journalism, it's voyeurism. The studio audience was completely silent. Now, some people looking uncomfortable, others appearing mesmerized by the unfolding drama. The tension between the two hosts was so thick it was almost tangible, and everyone in the room could feel that this was spiraling into something much bigger than a simple disagreement. Voyeurism. That's what you're calling my interview style. Kelly, you're way out of line here. I've always conducted myself professionally, and I've never crossed boundaries with any guest. Professional. You call this professional? You've been passive-aggressively pushing me to break down and cry about my divorce since the moment I sat down. That's not professional, that's predatory. Carson's face went red. Predatory. Are you seriously going to sit there and accuse me of being predatory because I asked you about your own music? This is insane, Kelly. You're completely overreacting to a standard interview. Standard interview? Carson, if this is what you consider standard, then maybe you need to take a long, hard look at what kind of interviewer you've become. Maybe you need to ask yourself when you stopped caring about your guests as people and started seeing them as just sources of drama for your show. I care about my guests. I've built relationships with people in this industry that span decades, but I also have a responsibility to my audience to ask the questions they want answered. That's literally my job. Your job is to ask questions, not to emotionally manipulate your guests into giving you the dramatic moments you think will boost your ratings. There's a difference between being curious and being cruel. Carson was visibly shaken with anger. Now cruel? You think I'm being cruel? Kelly, you came on my show. You agreed to this interview. You knew exactly what kind of questions would be asked. And now you're trying to make me the villain because you don't like having to answer for the choices you made, the choices I made. What choices, Carson? The choice to get married, the choice to have children, the choice to try to make that marriage work even when it was falling apart, the choice to write honest music about my experiences. Which of those choices exactly gives you the right to treat me like garbage? The production crew was in full panic mode now, with assistants running back and forth and the show's director speaking rapidly into his headset. But Kelly and Carson were completely absorbed in their confrontation, oblivious to everything except their escalating argument. You want to know what gives me the right? Carson shot back, his voice now matching Kelly's intensity. And yes, the experiences you've chosen to share with the world through your art. That's literally how interviews work, Kelly. Chosen to share. Carson, just because I process my emotions through songwriting doesn't mean I've chosen to make my private life public property. There's a difference between artistic expression and signing away your right to privacy. But there isn't a difference when you're promoting that artistic expression on national television. You can't cherry-pick which parts of your story you want to discuss. If the song is about your divorce, then talking about your divorce is relevant. Kelly took a step closer to Carson, her voice dropping to a dangerously low tone. You know what's really relevant, Carson? The fact that you think my pain is your content. The fact that you think because I'm famous, I owe you and your audience access to every painful detail of my life. I never said you owed anyone anything. Ambush. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be an ambush, but that's exactly what it turned into the moment you decided to keep pushing after I expressed discomfort with your questions. A decent person would have backed off. Carson laughed bitterly. A decent person? Now I'm not a decent person because I'm doing my job. Kelly, you're being ridiculous. You're acting like I asked you something completely inappropriate when all I did was ask about a song that you wrote and recorded and put on an album that you're here to promote. It's not what you asked, Carson. It's how you asked it and how you refused to let it go when I clearly didn't want to discuss it in detail. It's the fact that you seem to think my discomfort is less important than getting your soundbite. Your discomfort? Kelly, you've been attacking my character and my professionalism for the past 15 minutes. You've called me predatory, cruel, and now you're questioning my decency as a human being. But sure, let's talk about your discomfort. Kelly's publicist finally stepped forward, trying to intervene. Both Kelly and Carson turned toward the publicist simultaneously, speaking in unison. Stay out of this. The publicist backed away quickly, clearly not wanting to get caught in the crossfire of their escalating confrontation. You know what, Carson? I think this whole thing has shown exactly who you really are as an interviewer and as a person. You care more about creating drama than you do about treating your guests with respect. And this whole thing has shown me exactly who you really are too. Kelly, you're someone who can dish it out but can't take it. You can write songs about your personal life and profit from them. But the moment someone asks you to explain those songs, you fall apart and start throwing accusations around. Fall apart? You think, this is me falling apart. Carson, this is me standing up for myself and for every other artist who's ever been subjected to your interrogation style and felt like they couldn't say anything because they needed the publicity. Interrogation style. Kelly, you're delusional. This is a morning talk show, not a criminal investigation. The fact that you can't handle basic questions about your own work says more about you than it does about me. Basic questions. Carson, you've been trying to make me cry on live television since I sat down. That's not basic. That's manipulative. And the fact that you can't see the difference is exactly the problem. Carson threw his hands up in frustration. Make you cry. I asked you about one song, Kelly. One song. Everything else has been you attacking me and turning this into some kind of crusade against the media. One song that you brought up specifically because you thought it would get an emotional reaction. Don't pretend this was some innocent question. It was an innocent question about your art. The fact that you can't discuss your own creative work without having a meltdown is not my fault. Meltdown? A meltdown. Carson, I'm not having a meltdown. I'm calling you out on your unprofessional behavior. There's a big difference. Unprofessional. You're right. You're not the one screaming. You're the one who calmly and systematically tried to break down my emotional defenses for the entertainment of your audience. That's actually worse than screaming, Carson. That's calculated. Calculated. Kelly, you're paranoid. You're seeing conspiracies where there aren't any. I asked you a straightforward question about your music, and you've blown it completely out of proportion. Kelly began removing her microphone, her hands shaking with rage. You know what, Carson? I'm done. I'm done with this interview. I'm done with your show, and I'm done pretending that this kind of treatment is acceptable. Fine, walk away. That's a very mature way to handle a professional disagreement. My fans will be impressed that I finally stood up to a bully instead of just sitting there and taking it like everyone expects celebrities to do. Carson stepped forward, his face inches from Kelly's. Kelly, you've spent this entire interview attacking my character, questioning my professionalism, and now you're calling me names. If anyone's being a bully here, it's you. If that makes me a bully in your mind, then I'm proud to be one. Emotionally exploit. Kelly, you're being absolutely insane. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your friend. I'm a television host asking questions about your public statements and your work. Kelly finished removing her microphone and threw it down on the chair. Exactly, Carson. You're not my friend. You're not someone who cares about me as a person. You're just someone who sees me as content for your show. Thanks for finally admitting it. That's not what I said, and you know it. But fine, twist my words if it makes you feel better about storming off like a child. Kelly turned toward the exit, then spun back around to face Carson one last time. You know what, Carson? I hope your audience sees exactly what kind of person you really are. I hope they see how you treat people when they don't give you exactly what you want. And I hope your fans see how you act when someone asks you to be accountable for the work you put out into the world. This has been incredibly revealing, Kelly. It certainly has been revealing. Goodbye, Carson. Kelly walked off the set, leaving Carson standing alone in front of the cameras, the studio audience sitting in stunned silence, and millions of viewers at home witnessing one of the most explosive confrontations in morning television history. Carson looked directly into the camera, his professional composure finally returning. Well, that was certainly unexpected. We'll be right back after this commercial break. As the cameras cut away, the studio erupted in chaos, with producers rushing around trying to figure out how to salvage the rest of the show. While Carson stood there, still processing what had just happened. So there you have it, one of the most intense celebrity confrontations ever captured on live television. What started as a routine promotional interview spiraled into a heated debate about media ethics, celebrity privacy, and the boundaries of entertainment journalism. Both Kelly and Carson stood their ground, neither willing to back down from their positions, resulting in one of the most memorable moments in morning show history. What do you think? Was Kelly right to call out Carson's interview tactics, or did she overreact to standard promotional questions? Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments below.